The final match here of the Middle East qualifiers is right now. Let's dive in as the players jump off the bus one final time for the day.
Here it is. Onto the island we go. A mega city through Rumble Ruins bus path, so pretty evenly split for majority of these players as they continue to move over. I'm sure we'll see that even 50-50 at Brutal Bastion like we've seen time and time again. And of course, Mega City still stacked up. You could see the arrows there dropping down in. I mean, 3, 4, maybe even 5 duos. I mean, it's just a popular spot as it is. And this is where you see a lot of the teams, right? You would think like, hey, the ones that have been contested off spawn, maybe they've gone down early a couple of games. It's the last game. Let's switch it up and make sure we land somewhere safe, because there are some uncontested split drops on the map right now. They're like, no, we want to stick to what we know, what we've practiced, because when it comes down to it, the teams that are contested, they're going to need those eliminations to make up for it.
I don't know about you, man, but I'm not landing 5 teams deep into Mega City. I'm going to Shadow Slabs.
I'm not.
That has one team.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere near
Slabs. Like, what is going on? Why are there so many players here competing in this drop here? Nevertheless, though, we'll see how this plays out for these teams, as a lot of them have been fighting the whole time. And remember, look, this is your top 6 as of right now. So close here towards the top. You see CalGamer and Nema are just barely behind Hero and Fahad, so it's going to be a close one here to the finish. Now, though, OG going to take some shots here. Shockwave comes out, does slip away, but just barely.
And now he'll dive back down with the shotgun. Says, you know what? It's my time to dish out some punishment. So he looks, finds one, looks for the finish to try and grab those extra shockwaves, but forced to take the gunfight. So we'll go down. Teammate looks to clean up, and they will. LLJFT finds it, but now has to avoid the third party.
Yeah, and this is going to be a tough one as he tries to shockwave away there just to keep his teammate alive. It does look like no other team is actively pushing this, so they should be safe. However, obviously you can never be too safe in a situation like this, as Lil Fahad and his teammate not too far away from that could cause a problem. But now diving back in with Kame Med going up against SO8, and great finish there for them. Saad is going to have to stay alive here, does use a bit of action, but wait. Med is getting tagged up from another direction here. This could be a serious problem. Now Med is down. The last shockwave actually coming out. And it is Saad that is going to be able to clean up Med. But it does look like Kame should be able to fully disengage here. We'll have to wait and see if they survive, as players just looming in the distance could cause some problems as these teams begin to rotate away. But this fight is definitely going to be a long one, as now we switch over to Yonks and Sherix. Of course, M Sherry, Lil M Sherry, and M Sherry X hanging out, doing what they can here from a bit of a high ground spot. Just gonna go ahead and pressure these teams around. Not too much going on, which kind of is anticipated here at this point in the zero build game. But I will say this, looking at the loadout, you saw the flapjack rifle. You already know I'm rooting for this team now, or that team.
You really are a fan of it, huh?
I am. Listen, the flapjack rifle, it is reminiscent of the old drum gun, right? Like that's the best
don't say that.
way,
You're gonna scare me.
That's the best way to describe it. It really is. Like,
no, you're right. You're right.
Think about it, like point to point. Like, I should bring up the stats just to compare drum gun to the flapjack rifle, because the one thing the flapjack rifle, in my opinion, has over the drum gun even is that it has better range and better bloom. Like it it has a very tight spread when you're shooting it, so it is way more accurate. It's very similar. Obviously, it's not more accurate than the MK Alpha, let me be clear, but it is still a viable option for a long-range weapon. Definitely more than any of the other assault rifles in the game. So we'll definitely see how this continues to play out. But of course, M Sherry hitting the old flare gun action here. But okay, so we've talked enough about the flapjack. Let's talk about some more utility in the game that we really haven't covered too much. Obviously, we talk about bunkers. We have talked about, obviously, the heals in the game. One thing we really haven't talked about is the flare gun enough. What do you think? What are your thoughts on the flare gun in its current state? And do you think it is a kind of requirement for these players in their inventory?
I'll be honest with you, it's really not worth picking up and carrying for the entire game just because of the spawn rate. The spawn rate is so high, you can find them everywhere, or you might even get the augment for it. So you'll be able to pick them up at some point or another, and once you do grab it, go ahead and use those charges in it. Go ahead and get an idea of what your surrounding area and the landscape's going to look like, and then go about your rotate. Especially if you can get your hands on one during the end game, it can cause some real chaos. So I would say long run, not really worth carrying, but as I said, right? the spawn rate through the roof, so you can find them.
I agree. I definitely agree. It's definitely going to be something that is not literally prioritized, but it's going to be more situational for sure, as Mansoor and Adapt are just having a tough day, man. You know, again, high expectations off the rip there for this duo. I even spoke to some people on socials, and they were hyping them up, saying, like, this is the team you got to watch. And, of course, speaking of another team, we had Rapid as well and his duo. But both absent here from the top 6, as players like Satam and Smicky have just been so consistent. And that's what makes this format tough to compete in, is 5 points per elimination is massive, right?
Yeah.
And there are a ton of teams that are consistent. Even when we talked about Fahad and Hero, when they lost the top spot, they were consistent. They had won 2 games, but when they weren't in the top spot, it was because of eliminations. And so these teams are starting to pick up on that and realize how valuable they truly are, and they're going to go for it. As there it is, Sherry going to focus on Fahad here from the Falcon team just to keep him alive. Does Shockwave away, might actually be able to slip into the distance, and sure enough does, as now Sherry forced to just continue to loot on.
This is where you can start to look as well. I mean, the jungle, it's so easy to avoid players. I mean, if you're getting fought and you're able to get away from the initial fight, it's so easy to slip away into the darkness, whether it be a bush, a rift, a temple, something, right? You can jump on top of a tree just like Phoenix there. I mean, there's so many different ways to maneuver yourself within this new biome. It really is a skill set. The players that have been landing here for majority of the season are the ones that can find those secret little sneaky spots.
You're right. The sneaky spots are definitely the ones that come from more experienced players that have been playing for that and getting a better understanding, especially in the new spots. But Kakarot and Murstache, this is their final run. I'm not sure where they finished on the leaderboard leading into this, because they were outside of, I believe, the top 20. So
it's rough.
They would need, I mean, let's just spitball, 20-plus eliminations.
Yeah, realistically, yeah.
And they would need the win. And I think they realize that, and you see how active they are in the Storm. So that doesn't surprise me to see this turned on Murstache, because, again, if anybody can have a massive elimination comeback, it's that guy.
Yeah, he's no stranger to this level of competition, right? He knows, and you can see it there. They were already positioning themselves. They're keying dead side. They're moving towards edge zone and looking to find these fights on players that are more unsuspecting, maybe the ones hiding in zone, trying to play time a little bit more. He knows exactly what he needs to do. The only problem is these lobbies are kind of hard to figure out. You have a lot of players who play a little bit differently, especially since it's zero build, whether they're playing center zone or edge zone. I mean, you can see it, right? They're so scattered around the side here. A lot of them staying close to these name POIs, but at the same time, there's plenty of players playing center zone.
That's true. There is quite a few. And honestly, the teams that are going further to the south are going to be the most beneficial in a situation like this, as the zone will continue to pull. Typically, in just from experience, we've seen that the zones that pull further and further over the water are more likely to continue to pull in that direction. So obviously, if you see a zone that pulls heavy north of Breakwater Bay, same thing would happen. That zone would continue to go north. And so that's what we're seeing from these zones here as they continue to pull south. Is as soon as you see the zone present itself and it's fully over the water, you know you need to start moving. You cannot spend time there on the north side, and that's how you're going to have to rotate. But Draftel, Dexy Fight, two players that we've seen a few times, but haven't been able to see everything from them. Unfortunate situation there as the combat cache. I don't know if you all caught that. It was legendary variant there for a moment, but almost as soon as they activated it, it shifted to the epic rarity, which means they're only going to get epic rare weapons out of it. So a little loss, but not too much for sure. Still
going to be able to get the legendary slurp juice, of course, which for the most part, most of these players are really what they're looking for.
Priority.
I mean, when you look at it, right, of course the rarity upgrades are great, but if you got your hands on an MK and a Havoc, it's going to get the job done. You just need to make sure you have those healing items and utility, and they'll go ahead and be able to find that there as the team drops off the top of Rumble Ruins down below, looking for a rift, maybe some extra vault loot. I mean, there's so many different options you can do in these new POIs as well. There's places to go, loot that's stashed around, whether it be down in the caves or other scattered vaults, because they have vaults that not only the ones we're used to seeing, but we have vaults that are a little bit more puzzle based as well. So it's adding that interesting new dynamic we've never seen before.
Yeah, definitely right. The fight for Brutal Bastion, it does look like has concluded, and of course Satam and Smicky still find themselves supreme, the champions of Brutal Bastion. Unsurprising, to be honest. They've continued to showcase that whether they're contested or not, they can still be a top 5 team. And so They just need a consistent game here, as they are leagues above 6th, 5th, and 4th. But you know as well as I do, one game can change it all, depending on how these teams finishes. We talk about, of course, first place right now.
Still.
Fahad and Hero still holding it down as of now. But again, anything can change here. Big game coming out for a lot of these players. Remember, 60 points for a win. Let's just say hypothetical. Bloomy, 60 points wins this as both Hero and Fahad go down early. You can obviously see him with a win overtake Hero and Fahad and even potentially push them out of the top 5. That's how close these final moments are here, folks. And it is not typical from what we've seen in the past, especially when you had the likes of Malibu Thomas HD in some of these qualifying finals, as they were just running away with it at times. So this is definitely going to be a picture-perfect finish as we watch to see who's going to claim the 5 spots.
You'll see a lot of the players who seem to get and understand the meta. Not only will they dominate in placement, but they'll be in first place the whole time and still get 10 elimination games and continue to build on that lead, which we're not seeing. So if that's any indicator of what we're in for over the next 3 days, I have to say I cannot wait. But we have to get through this game first. We have to go ahead and crown those last 5 spots to guarantee $10,000 at least just for making it there, but could even compete for $2 million in their fair share of that first place $500,000 spot.
I mean, honestly, that's what it's all about, right? First place in the next 3 days walks away with $500,000, their share of $2 million. So see how it plays out for them. But no, of course, we have to check out this fight. This is a replay of what has happened, and Mansour clutching up there for his teammate is huge. But I know you noticed it as well as I do. Another one of those prismatic shots. And oh my gosh, speaking of shots, what did I just watch? That explosive repeater rifle is nuts. Was that 171?
Yeah, 171 damage from that far with the explosive repeater. That's a headshot. That's direct content. That's whatever you could look for. Plus, maybe even the augment. I'm not sure exactly what the values are. Could be the heavy headshot augment that gives you that little bit of extra damage with it. But still, that's just to show the power, right? We see a lot of players opting to carry the Cybertron cannon, but this new explosive repeater rifle is a very interesting X factor it adds to the competition.
I'm going to be honest with you. I genuinely believe the reason that people are still favoring the cannon over the repeater is that there hasn't been enough time to truly practice with it in zero builds. And I think a lot of players have had fun with it, right? It's very reminiscent of like the double pump if you rock the Havoc pump shotgun and that. It feels like you are back in the Chapter 1 days where you could rock 2 pump shotguns and just keep playing around. But players haven't really been playing it at range, and that was a perfect example of why it's so valuable to have in the inventory in multiple facets, because it does considerable structure damage as well.
No, I mean, absolutely. You just have to make sure you have enough heavy ammo, right? It's a little bit more of a rarer round, but if you're able to find some of those larger ammo boxes, it could really start to switch things up. But now we see it POI rifting, some big battles, some big contestation as Salva just makes their way up the zip line, immediately sent back down, losing the teammate to the third party as well. NM7, the one to do so, rocking that mythic MK, does so much damage, that increased fire rate. Not to mention, they have the utility to go along with it. The bunkers, the shockwaves, everything you could need to try and make a stand here at the island.
I mean, look, fights are going on left, right, and center here around the map, and of course, we got to talk about it. Kakarot and Murstache going to need a big game, and it looks like they're going to do that. It does look like that's 4 eliminations here in 4 zones. So phenomenal start for them, but they're going to have to keep it moving. They cannot slow down yet, as it looks like Malik is going to push his way back into Storm, and I do see, I believe, 1 arrow pushing potentially into the Storm. Could be a problem there for Malik, but we'll tune back in later and see as Adapter and Mansour have claimed the house on top of the floating island here. And it does look like potentially some players underneath, so they're going to need to be careful as they go for the capture point, because all it takes, like we talked about before, is a team rifting up collectively and landing on them, being the aggressors in a fight, and they could ultimately lose the island. So we're going to pay close attention to that fight too, as still tons of players yet to rotate into the zone.
Yeah, and we've seen it, right? Most of these zero build players, when they get into these games and they look at the POI, this rifting POI, the floating island, right? They see it as an opportunity to try and get their hands on extra heals, maybe some weapon upgrades, that mythic drum gun. So they pre-pop the slurps. They know they guarantee some up there if they're able to capture the point as is. And that's a scary thought, because the players that are sitting up there thinking, oh, we're safe, we have high elevation, we can look down. Next thing they know, 2 players rifting onto one of them who's sitting on top of the roof of the house with slurps popped. It's a lethal combo, to say the least.
It is, and we're going to watch as these games continue on, though, as Satam has gone down, and that's going to be Smicky left as a solo there to hold it down for the team, and we'll have to wait and see if that works out for them. And that's just a tough spot to find themselves in, especially at this point. Remember, they're in the top 5 contention now, but they have to survive. If he goes down here, that will be the first time throughout the entire competition where they don't end in the top 5, because that top 6, I should say, really is that close.
Yeah, you have to make everything count now as we're into that half point. Half the lobby has already been eliminated, so we're down to those final moments, and we will see another team fall. 20 remain at this point. We can still see the leaderboard here. Hero, Vahad still at the top of it, but Dexify, Draft, still having to make their way in. 3 eliminations and a long way to go.
Draftel is definitely one of those players we've watched closely throughout the years, and Dexify not as consistent, of course, but great to see them pairing up in these final moments, as this has been a big day for a lot of Middle East players, and honestly, a big showcase. That's what I love Gamers8 for, is like, this is the biggest third-party event Fortnite gets all year long. And so the ability to showcase these incredibly talented players in this way is always super nice. So we'll see how this showcase finalizes, as Game 6 is about halfway done, a little bit more than halfway done. And these teams fighting for the final spots. Of course, Kakarot, Murstache, still only 4 eliminations. You know as well as I do, Ben, they need a big one here. Yeah,
they need to make a run, make up that lost ground, push themselves up the leaderboard. Whichever way you want to put it, they need to do more. And we'll have to wait and see how they make that happen, because this lobby is starting to dwindle and the action is starting to kick off. We can see it here. Abu Fall closing the distance onto Kai. They find that initial knock, but the third party starts to get involved and punish them. But you can see AZ2M now gets the confirm and does the damage on the third partying team, but will lose the teammate in the process.
This is a tough loss here for both teams. It does look like losing a teammate here in this situation, but Abu Fall going down yet again. Remember, the first fight we tuned in with on the day was Abu Fall going down there with his teammate, but no, shots are coming through, walls are breaking. It's Cal Gamer and Nema who are just continue to pressure on here, and they're going to get that full elimination onto Abu Fall, leaving his teammate now as a solo.
Nema, Cal Gamer, just looking. They only have 2 eliminations at this point, but probably one of the best spots in the zone, to be honest. They're elevated very nicely. And we look at it, right? You talked about how these zones that start to try and edge towards the water just a little bit tend to pull that way even more. I mean, this zone is looking a little bit scary, almost 50-50 in the water on the land, so there really isn't a lot of real estate to go around.
No, there is not. This one's going to be a tough one, a tough finish, especially depending on how the zones continue to pool as the half and half zone appears. Remember, in the later zones, they become a little bit different. They pool into different directions. They split into the storm as you pool. So we're going to pay close attention to those final zones, as Bloomy's still in this one. And again, still in contention for a top 5 spot. So you know him and Lardle are going to be fighting for it, as Artor finds himself down below. That's another team that was in top 5 before, not anymore. So they need a big, big game to finish out.
And they can't afford to make mistakes here, because this is where a lot of the teams are going to get majority of their eliminations, so you can fall or rise on the leaderboard very quickly. As you can start to see, Artor finding some eliminations in the feed there in the top left, but Bloomer and Lardle now dealing the damage they need to. They stayed on top of the hill to hold high ground so they could do just this. They look for a knock, they find the elimination, and then they push in so they can try and grab the loot or not even have to invest to use their own utility. They choose to this time around, and now they're starting to be punished, though. The Cybertron cannon by the other duo starting to break things down for him.
And it is Mansoor and Adapter here pressuring Bloomy and his teammate. That's going to be a big shot onto Lardle. He's going to need to get back under cover, as now just taking too much damage. Lardle's going to go down. Bloomy's left as a solo. Can he do something here, as Mansoor just hunts for him? And no, Bloomy is out. That's our 4th place team going into this game completely out of this one early.
And it's so close now. He just has to hope and pray he can hold on and not drop too many spots. He'll be watching that leaderboard closely, but not as closely as us in the audience, as we're now top 10 in this game. We have to keep moving. Artor and Meow in a good spot. Artor's a solo, though, just down below the bunker, having to play this angle properly, but it's going to go down to the right-hand peak. You just don't win those, Panda.
Yeah, and that's going to be a tough finish there for him, as you know he needed a big finish here to end the day, but it's still going to be very, very close as the leaderboard continues on. And now, though, It does look like Mansoor and Adapter are going to be one of the few duos left in this. You see 6 teams remain, and it's 9 total players, meaning that there's not a ton of full duos in this one to finish it off. But Nema and Cal Gamer, they said, you know what? We're not content with top 5. We want top 1, and they are now in contention to take away the top spot here from these other teams.
And you have to look now, Hero and Fahad, 258 points, so it's really close here. So Cal and Emma, they're looking. One of the only duos remaining in a great, powerful spot here to try and close out the game. Zone will pull away. They only have a short rotate ahead of them, but Hero and Fahad still able to make a run to hold down their spot.
Look at this, 9 eliminations here on top of what could be a victory royale is huge. We tuned in with Hero and Fahad just moments ago, and they're another solid duo, obviously, in the top spot as of now. They could potentially lose it because they're not getting enough eliminations in comparison. So we'll see how this finishes out. It's going to be a tight race here to the finish between the two. And there it is. You see Trickshot there in the distance, of course, with his teammate. It actually potentially not. It looks like Trickshot might be a solo.
It's a 2v2, 1v1. So a lot of these players need to try and play out for those last couple of placement points. Maybe snag an elimination off one of these duos when they're not paying attention. But Hero and Fahad playing this well over the top of the bunker, just looking to try and get some pop shots in, deal a little bit of damage on the players before they rotate through. But Draftel, 17 HP, no overshield, playing this little over-under with this player on the edge of zone, and they're going to go down, but he runs in for the finish. There's not going to be any sort of siphon, so who will fall? So Cal Gamer's a solo. Another one in the distance, that'll be trick shots. And now a 2v1v1 to end the game 6, and the qualifiers, Panda.
Wow, and it looks like Cal Gamer actually had that one stolen from him. So it's the 1v2. It is 2 top 5 teams trying to finish this out. Cal's not having any success here as he goes down, and Fahad and Hero finish winning their 3rd game of the day.
And that'll be half the games going their way. That's a pretty solid win ratio. 50% of the games, Fahad and Hero coming out strong to lock down that first place spot. I mean, Panda, they gotta secure it.
I mean, look, it's safe to say they're walking away, going into the Gamers8 finals event. You look, these players realizing, looking at the leaderboard, as it's finalizing, you know what? We made it, right? But we don't know quite yet. It's going to be tight there in the finish because, again, so many players were just points off of one another right there in the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, you could see first and second, I'm sure, celebrating, right? But the rest of them, that 3rd, 4th, 5th, they're going to be sitting there eerily quiet, staring at this leaderboard, hitting refresh, trying to see where things will pan out, as we'll wait to find out ourselves. I mean, we really don't know either. We'll be waiting for that final information. I mean, we can assume Hero and Fahad really are the only ones here that are going to be 100% safe.
They are. I mean, look, 3 wins. They had a decent amount of eliminations, not a ton, but a decent in the final game.
Yeah.
They secure it.
They're
going on. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. But the other 4 spots,
yeah,
I don't know. It's going to be close.
It's been so close.
As we prepare to find out who is actually going on to the Gamers8 event. Honestly, it has been a blast casting alongside you, Ben K. Always a pleasure, of course, now getting to do it on the big stage. And here it is. Just some incredible highlight moments here to finish off the day. Did you expect Adapter and Mansoor to have such a solid final game?
I'll be honest with you, I've seen bright showings from them in the competition throughout. Granted, a couple mistakes here or there, but that's to be expected. This is zero build. There's just so much more of an aspect of unpredictability when it comes to zero build.